Well, thanks everybody for being here tonight on this to discuss this incredibly interesting and controversial subject. We've been talking about. There's a lot of discussion about AI. Will AI take our jobs? Are AI companies overvalued? That's kind of a big one this week. That there's a lot of news out there about. Are we building something world-changing or something really dangerous? These are a lot of big questions around AI. But tonight we're going to focus on the physical engine behind it all, which is data centers and the massive energy demand they bring. I'm particularly interested in this subject because I cover climate policy for California. And California is one of the biggest data center states in the entire country. But for various reasons, it's hard to get a sense of just how much power they will need. Data centers are concentrated here in the Bay Area. They have a lot of supporters, including here in San Jose. But their growth really is raising real questions about the state's ability to meet clean energy goals while also meeting that demand. So the question is, can we meet the demand, and should we, while still trying to meet our clean energy goals? And so to kick us off, I'm joined by Dr. Lian Min from Stanford's Precourt Institute for Energy. He's been investigating this very issue. He'll be testifying before the Little Hoover Commission, I got that right, later this week, just on this subject. But we get him here tonight first, and to get to hear from him firsthand, to get his expertise. So, Lian, thanks very much for being with us tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And I just thought it would be kind of appropriate and sort of a good first step to just sort of set the table a little bit. And then we've got a full panel to sort of discuss this issue, and we're going to invite them on stage just after a couple sort of table-setting questions with Liang. So just give us a sense. You've been studying this issue a lot this year. How can the public understand what the true energy footprint of the largest AI data centers are? I mean, this is somewhat of a black box, but you and others have really studied this. So how can the public get an understanding of just how much energy is being used by data centers?
That's a really good question. Good evening, everybody. So I would recommend, if you're interested in this topic, I would recommend the 3 sources you can find the insights regarding, how much more data center we're talking about, like gigawatt, megawatt, etc. One is California Energy Commission. They have a responsibility for the state of California really forecast what is the future energy demand will look like. If you look into their last year's report, you will see the demand for state of California will grow tremendously because of data center. But they don't give you the detail, like how many megawatt or gigawatt will coming from data center. Right? That's one resource, give a big picture regarding what is the future demand would look like. And the second one is you can look into Pacific Gas Electric, because they invest on utility. Every quarter, they need to do the earning call. Right? On their every earning call, they talk about 10 gigawatt. That's the last earning call they talk about. And before that, they talk about 8.5. Then before that, talk about 5, maybe 3 gigawatt.
And that's all this year, right? So quite a bit of increase?
That's quite a bit increase. Yeah. But that's people interested in to put data center in state of California. Doesn't mean it will show up eventually, right? And so that's a second resource you can look into. And many utility across the country, they do earning calls, they report these numbers. Right? And the third resource you look into is what actually we plan to build the infrastructure for these data centers. The references go to the California ISO, and PG&E submitted their transmission enhancement plan about a month ago, maybe a couple of weeks ago. And for the last cluster, in this study, they show that we're going to accommodate 840 megawatt for the cluster study, plus 750 sequential studies. So we talk about 1.5 gigawatt data center likely are going to show up in PG&E area. So we need to build a transmission for this group of customers.
And give us a sense of just how much energy that is. I mean, millions and millions of homes.
That's a really good question. So literally, we can talk about like 1 gigawatt is about 1 million homes.
Right. So we're talking about quite a bit of demand coming up. This is something that policymakers are really just starting to grapple with. If you could design the way we power AI in California, what would that look like? What, if it was up to you to design a sort of policy framework, what would you recommend? What would be like maybe the top couple of things you would suggest policymakers?
Well, that's also a big question. But I would just say, usually we do recommend the following 3. And first is really stabilize our system. And by seeing that, try not retire the Diablo Canyon power plant, because that's very important to maintain the resource adequacy generation needs for the state of California.
So maintain nuclear power.
Maintain generation fleets, clean generation fleets as much as we can.
Yeah.
Right? And the second was really optimize and increase utilization our existing infrastructure before we build a new thing.
Okay.
In terms of optimize utilization of transmission system and optimize utilization of existing generation fleet, and before we build a new infrastructure. And the third one is carefully build a new infrastructure in the strategic location to unlock the capacity for the whole system.
Okay, great. So I guess before I invite the rest of our panelists up to discuss this in depth and to talk about how this is playing out here in San Jose tonight, I just want to ask, is the goal of decarbonizing, over the next 20 years or so, that is, California's goal, is that in fundamental tension with this huge growth in data centers demand? Do those two goals conflict? I know that's a question we'll be exploring, for the rest of the evening, but just lay it out for us. How do you view that question?
I view that the decarbonization goals, SB 100, we must have, cannot be compromised. And if we leverage the load growth well, then we can achieve this goal, 2 goals together. And also we can accelerate to achieve the goal for the clean energy. That's my perspective.
So it may be possible to, in some ways, leverage the demand from energy, the energy demand from data centers, to complement our clean energy goals.
Yeah,
okay.
And also any new megawatt show up in the system, hopefully they will be served by clean electricity.
Hopefully, right. Okay, terrific. Well, I just wanted to, set the stage a bit, and I'd like to now invite the rest of our panelists, please to come join me, have a seat, and I'll introduce you, and let's make sure everybody has a microphone. Terrific. So I'd like to begin by introducing Lori Mitchell, the director of San Jose Clean Energy, the city's power provider. She's at the center of the effort to ensure the massive electricity growth from data centers. It's projected at about 200 to 300 megawatts by 2030. I believe we discussed that demand is met with clean power. Lori, thanks so much for joining us tonight. And then Ahmad Thomas, the CEO of the Silicon Valley Leadership Group. He represents major tech companies across the region, many of which rely heavily on data centers to power their operations. So thanks very much, Ahmad, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And then Mark Toney, Executive Director of the Utility Reform Network, or TURN. He's here with somewhat of a skeptical lens on data center growth and the AI surge, especially what it could mean for local environmental impacts, affordability in the state, and California's broader climate goals. So Mark, thank you very much for rounding us out this evening.
Thank you for having me.
So I'd like to start just with the basic theme of, what is California doing to encourage data center growth here in California. And Ahmad, I'd love to start with you. In Sacramento, efforts to add some transparency, some guardrails around data centers, they struggled this year. Lawmakers, for instance, set aside 2 bills focused on data center energy use. One, AB 222, required operators to disclose their electricity use, and another, SB 58, that offered clean power incentives. So those bills, they didn't make it through the legislative session. Ahmad, the Silicon Valley Leadership Group opposed the transparency measure. Could you tell us a little bit about that? Why oppose more transparency for data center energy use?
Sure, and I appreciate the question very much. And maybe what I would first do, just to level set, is speak about the environment we're in here in terms of transformation with AI. And then I can share a little more background. I won't go too deep in the weeds on the bills, but around the general positioning we've had at Silicon Valley Leadership Group, representing many of our largest employers and tech companies across the region. First, in terms of the opportunity, and I really do view this entire conversation and set of circumstances before us as a generational set of opportunities. What we're seeing with AI in the marketplace, what we're seeing with AI in terms of social impact, healthcare, potential cures for disease, early detection of cancer, on and on and on, things to benefit the human condition, is truly transformational. Right, and I think it's very important to level set that right up front. And the centerpiece of this global transformation is happening here in California and right here in the Bay Area. So for Silicon Valley Leadership Group, for our innovative companies, we want to do everything humanly possible to drive that innovation, drive more of the advancement and harnessing of these technologies right here in California. Now, data centers are core to this technology scaling right here in California. And whenever we've seen measures or approaches that make it harder or make it less competitive for California to be the site or home of these innovations, that's where you see us engage, right? And you've seen just recently in Texas, right, in the last couple of days, $40 billion in data center development. For a variety of reasons, but in certain circumstances, the legislative posture, the regulatory approach of other states is one that is more friendly to seeing this type of development. So to answer that question very directly, we try to make California as competitive as possible. We try to engage to have a playing field that does not disadvantage our companies or our state versus other states in a highly competitive environment. And then in terms of what I have no doubt and hope we'll address, affordability, and what this means for consumers across our region and across our state, we believe as we look at clean energy, as we look at bringing new infrastructure, power, transmission online, there are opportunities to do this in a cost-effective manner.
Nevertheless, if we have a great amount of demand from these centers, what's wrong with detailing exactly how much energy they're using? I mean, if we're talking about forecasting, how can we properly forecast? How can we properly plan without knowing what kind of use they're using?
It's a great follow-up, and I appreciate the opportunity to maybe provide a little more color. Our view is certainly around issues of this importance to be a partner for our leaders in the state assembly and the state senate, and especially as we're going into year 2 of this session, I think there's going to be some very active discussions going on around data centers in particular. I think when we get to the details of what our regulatory regime looks like versus other states, or how we can make California more competitive while also keeping the affordability questions in mind. And again, I really like the follow-up, Alejandro. That's where sometimes we struggle to find that happy medium. But I should say, and I hope it's heard loud and clear, the posture of being approaching these problems from a mindset of collaboration and working together is top of mind for us.
Mark, I'd love your thoughts. Should companies be required to disclose this energy use? And I'd love anybody from the panel to weigh in as well. If not, how can policymakers plan around this opacity?
Alejandro, I first want to start off by thanking CalMatters for inviting me to be part of this panel. I also want to thank the audience for showing up on a Tuesday night. That's really terrific that there's so much interest in these issues. TURN is a consumer advocacy organization. We fight for the customers of particularly the investor-owned utilities. We believe in the cleanest, the cleanest, safest energy at the most affordable prices, or as I like to say, we want the most green for the least green. And on this question of data centers, we certainly think there needs to be more transparency, that's a good thing. How much energy are we talking about, so that we can see what's necessary to build. I will say that TURN's one of our major concerns is about affordability, and we want to make sure that with this affordability crisis, where particularly PG&E residential bills have doubled in 5 years, that the growth of data centers and the way it happens doesn't end up adding even more to the skyrocketing. So that's our main concern as an organization.
Okay, great. And then just to quickly run through the rest of the legislative session, lawmakers did try to regulate data centers this year. We had a bill, AB 93, that would have required data center operators to report their water use, and that bill was vetoed by the governor even after that measure was weakened to some degree. In the end, Governor Newsom signed only one measure, SB 57, which allowed the state's regulators to determine whether data centers were driving up costs. Why is it so tricky to get these measures passed in the State House? I'd invite anybody to answer, but Ahmad, Mark, why is it, what makes regulating data centers so difficult in Sacramento?
Look, I will say follow the money, okay? Follow the money when it comes to lobbying reports. Follow the lobbying that goes on. There's a lot of money on the table, folks. And money speaks very loudly in Sacramento. That's just life. That's how it works. You can like it, you can not like it. And I believe right now that data centers and their advocates hold the upper hand when it comes to impacting policy and exercising power because of their resources. That shouldn't surprise anybody.
What I would add, and I do appreciate Mark's point very much, for us, when we talk about the competitive position of California, which I do want to ensure does not get lost in this discussion, our future economy, and I would even argue when we look at the workforce opportunities, the labor upskilling opportunities, the future tax base of California, I would say it's not far-fetched to say it is predicated on what the next 3 to 5 years look like for us harnessing the power of this AI revolution, literally and figuratively, for a panel like this. And I do believe many of the conversations we have with leaders in Sacramento, as folks have become better acquainted with data centers, understanding what data center capacities and what data center power truly means for harnessing AI technologies and even the next generation chips, it's very hard to see a world where California is at the top of the AI pile if we do not have an approach to data centers that is at minimum mildly competitive with other states across the country. And I
And
think that
let's
fear
talk
is
a
very
little.
real.
Please go ahead. And let's talk a little bit. How do we do that? I mean, what would you like to see happen in California in order to support data center growth, if that's an objective?
I mean, Alejandro, I think Laura here at San Jose Clean Energy has done a lot to support data center growth, and I'd really like to hear what it is you've been doing to do that, because I think you have real life examples that could be useful to this discussion.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks so much, Mark. So first of all, thanks so much to CalMatters and to all of you for being here today. I'm Lori Mitchell, and I run San Jose Clean Energy, and we're a department within the city of San Jose. And data center growth is really important to the city of San Jose for many reasons. Of course, the economic development, but also it increases something called the utility user tax, which all energy users use, which helps our general fund. So that helps fund libraries and parks and the many things that the city is doing. So the city has a goal to attract more data center customers, and certainly us at San Jose Clean Energy, we're very focused on that. But we need to make sure that it's not at the expense of our existing customers, and affordability is at the center of everything that we're doing, and making sure that these new data center customers, in terms of the rates that we will provide them, that they're paying their cost of service rates. That's a term that we talk about in the utility industry, and it's very, very important. I would also say we want to make sure, I very much love Mark's phrase, we want the most green with the least amount of green. That's definitely what San Jose Clean Energy is all about. Right now, our rates are less expensive than PG&E, and we're 60% renewable. So if a data center wants to get connected today, that's the power mix that they will receive, which is well ahead of where most utilities are. The state has a goal of getting to 60% renewable by 2030. We've done that 5 years earlier, and we're very proud of that. Wallet Hub recently ranked San Jose as the #1 greenest city in the nation, and so that's something that we're very proud of here, and that we're very committed to, that we do not want to backtrack on our clean energy goals. So those are some of the things that we're doing, and I just wanted to say, there is a lot of load growth anticipated here in San Jose, and some of the facts that you were saying in the beginning, what we know for certain that they're in construction and coming online is about that 200 to 300 megawatts. But there's another 2 gigawatts in our pipeline of potential. And that's really important, because one of the main ways we're going to make sure that we're serving these data centers in an affordable way is that we don't procure too early for them. So that's one of the main strategies that we're employing, is to make sure that, that 200 to 300 megawatts that we know, yes, we're buying for them, but even within that, we want to see it come online, and we want to see how much they actually utilize. Some data centers only utilize about 50% of the capacity that they ask for. So we really want to make sure that we're not over procuring. And then I would say the last thing, and there's a lot more to talk about tonight, but where I see a lot of opportunity is just load flexibility. So some data centers have the ability to move load, and that can be very helpful, particularly on a hot summer day like in San Jose, where the professor's analogy of 1 gigawatt is 1 million households. That's also roughly what our load is here in the city of San Jose. And that usually happens on a really hot summer day. Our peak load will be about 1 gigawatt, but every other day it's about 700 megawatts, because not everybody's using their air conditioning all the time. So if I could get one of these data centers to shift their load in one of these hours, that means we don't have to procure more, and that's really good for everybody in terms of affordability. And I would say vice versa on the residential side. I think there's a lot of opportunity for load flexibility as well.
And I would add to that point, finding, well, one, these innovative solutions we are very much behind. Finding opportunities for public-private partnership, this is getting outside of the legislative realm, but especially around funding opportunities around new capacity is critically important, back to my point about business competitiveness. But also, Alejandro, to your point about what we would like to see, we were very close with Senator Cortese, this was in the last session, but the data center bill that we were behind was around permitting and streamlined processes. So this was taking data centers up to 200 megawatts and putting them through the California Energy Commission. Because when we look at the siting, the permitting, even some of the costs that are involved with delays connected to data center bills, it's extraordinarily significant. And it's very significant, again, when we look at that question of California and our regulatory posture, our set of opportunities around building out AI versus other states.
Right, and tell me a little bit about what happened with that bill, and then also, Leon, maybe we can talk a little bit about how close we are to, a process that you've advocated for, right, or recommended at least, more streamlined permitting for transmission projects.
Yeah, before I talk about that one, I want to add what Lori just mentioned regarding the flexibility, right? Because we think about how the customer pay, how the general rate case that the utility does. And typical utility is infrastructure. They don't make money by selling your electricity. They make money by building infrastructure, right? And the ROI rate of returns. And if we have less of electron in the systems, and the average fixed cost to each customer will be higher. Right? If we can introduce the more electron into the system, then the average fixed cost will go down. Right? And by seeing that, it's a very good matrix called the load factor. And data center manufacturing load, they are very stable. Their load factor could be 90% and 80%. But general customers, the load factors, you think about, you probably don't use any electricity in midnight, but you use a lot of electricity in the 7 p.m.s, right? So general household, the load factor is about 50% or 60%. So if we introduce more this kind of steady state load electron into the system, and we can reduce the average fixed cost infrastructure to more electron to be sold into the systems. So that's kind of one way potentially be able to even or maybe lower the rates.
Yeah. And is that something that you're looking at, Lori, and that the companies you're working with are saying that they will provide? And I guess following on to that, does the state need to provide more of a policy framework to help you ensure that San Jose continues to meet its clean energy goals? Yeah,
no, those are great questions. So just to clarify, here in California, community choice aggregation programs like San Jose Clean Energy, we procure energy on behalf of residents, but it's also a partnership with PG&E. PG&E is still in charge of that infrastructure and is delivering that energy. So you can think of it as they control the wires that connect to your house. And so, as the professor mentioned, there's fixed costs going down. That's really something that PG&E is very focused on, and we work closely with them. And there is a big opportunity there in terms of not building out additional infrastructure because you just utilize more of it. I would say what we're focused on at San Jose Clean Energy is really that load flexibility side. So we do not want to buy more power than we need. And that's something we're very focused on, especially with these data centers. So understanding, what their forecast is when they're coming online is really important. I think that's job number one. But then also understanding what flexibility they have to move their load around is really important. That hot summer day is a really big example, but also for residential customers, we're thinking there's a lot of load flexibility that can be unlocked there, especially as people electrify. If you think about when you plug in your electric vehicle, if we can stagger that so they're not all coming online at the same time, that can really free up capacity, and that helps on the procurement side of energy, but it also helps on the infrastructure side because you don't need as much infrastructure because you're really timing that generation. And so that's what we're very focused on, and happy to partner with PG&E on that as well.
Absolutely. I wanted to ask, in terms of just, should California be actively limiting data center growth at all? Mark, what do you think about this idea? Do others and if so, well, where does that data center growth occur? Should other states be bearing the costs of our tech industry's energy use? I mean, the argument you're hearing here tonight, I think, is that, well, we're the center of innovation. A lot of these companies are ours. We should partake in providing the infrastructure and the energy, setting an example.
I have a number of concerns that I think aren't adequately addressed. And I think a lot of times I'm worried that we're engaged in what I call faith-based policy making. And what I mean by faith-based policy making is that the benefits are very speculative, but the costs are very real. And when it comes to AI itself, there's a fundamental question. Why is it that the estimates are that by 2030, there's going to be $7 trillion invested, right? $1 trillion is 1,000 billion, okay? 7 trillion. It is not for charity. It is to create a profit, to create a return. That's what investors do. They're not philanthropists. They invest to create a return. That's just how it is. And so part of the question is, what if investors start to do some math and some of them say, my goodness, I can't figure out where all this wealth generation is coming from. Okay, there's one of the lead analysts at Goldman Sachs is one of the biggest AI skeptics who's been asking that question. How many of you remember hearing a while ago about DeepSeek, right? DeepSeek is this innovation from a company in China that claims to, where AI claims to use a lot less energy, okay? What if AI turns out to be as smart as everybody wants and figures out how to use less and less energy? Let's pretend that for a moment. Well, then what happens to all these investments? Okay? I worry about, we need to be the leaders of innovation. The San Jose Mercury reported last week that so far this year, 2,000 layoffs in high tech attributed to the growth of AI. And so I worry that that's just the tip of the iceberg. I worry about AI displacing good paying jobs by very intelligent people. I worry, is that better for society? Now, I can definitely tell you that electrifying Caltrain, that's an investment that benefits society. Building electric vehicle charging stations for the heavy trucking, that benefits low-income communities, communities of color, where all these trucks come in and out. Okay, it's also load growth. I consider it beneficial load growth. I'm going to take the other spectrum. Bitcoin mining. I find it hard to make an argument that that benefits society. I find it very hard. And what I'm worried is that data centers are closer to the Bitcoin than it is to the electric vehicle charging stations.
Professor Min, would you like to step in
I
and
think
give your thoughts?
Mark bring up a very good point, right? Basically, when we support AI, when we build AI, so first he bring a very good perspective. AI will be very smart, and create unlimited energy, very clean, unlimited energy. AI may drive us a breakthrough of fusion. AI may give us a medicine be able to cure cancer. Because we used to do a lot of experiments. Now we can use simulation, simulate all of things. We haven't seen that at this moment. But personally, I do believe we will see that in the very near future. And that's so-called AGI, human intelligence, and even in the Silicon Valley, we talk about super intelligence. Super intelligence means the AI itself. Right now, the GPT, the IQ is already like 140, very high IQs. But we talk about super intelligence, basically, the AI will be smarter than all the human beings accumulated. And so that's a direction I think all the scientists, the computer scientists we are moving toward. But when we do that, we need to be very careful how we build the infrastructure to support it. We talk about infrastructure as 4 layers, usually I categorize them. One is really the foundations. Foundation means electricity, the fiber network, and the others like water, etc. Right? And the second is the hyperscalers. And on top of that is the language model developers like OpenAI, Anthropic, etc. And the top of that is really application layers. So right now, really struggling, and the risk is extremely high, is application layers. Okay. And the infrastructure, I think we need more economy and more players to help us to advance our infrastructure for the United States. And the load growth is one of the best opportunities we should catch it. But we need to do it carefully. Let the data center developer pay the fair cost for the infrastructure upgrade. And how to define the fair cost, need the public policy to move toward this direction.
No, I think that's a very detailed and nuanced take. But I do think that Mark's question is a good one for the panel. What happens if we plan all of this transmission infrastructure, and we rely on promises from data centers saying yes, of course, we're going to be needing all of this energy. And then they don't show up. And who is left bearing the load then? Is it everyday Californians? We already have some of the highest energy rates in the country. How concerned should everyone be about that possibility? I think that's a good place for us to kind of close out. But I'd love to hear Lori and Ahmad's thought on that.
Yeah, I would say that's a very fair question. These days, not a day that goes by in the office where I'm not talking about this very issue with one of my staff. And I would say one of the main things to mitigate against that risk is really making sure that you don't procure too early. So there's a lot of forecasts out there, and we're paying attention, and we're looking at it, and really important to do that long-term forecasting, but also really important to realize that technology is changing fast. And so what we're doing at San Jose Clean Energy is, a couple things to manage this risk. One is, there's some customers where they have invested in these data centers in their own renewable resources because they have their own sustainability goals. And so that's great. We're allowing them to bring those resources to us so that we don't have to procure as well. There's other data center customers that we're talking to that, they just want the lowest cost electricity. They want it to be fair. They want to pay their fair share and all of that. But for those customers, we're really looking at short-term products to manage that risk. So, if they're here for a year and then in a year maybe their business model changes, we're not in a 20-year agreement that we have to unwind for that customer. And so there are products in the market that can help us mitigate this risk. But I think fundamentally you just have to go back to those basics of utility management and operations, and don't build too quickly for these customers until we have certainty. And so what's nice about in San Jose is I can go walk over to our planning department, and we know what's permitted, we know what's under construction, and so that allows us to have a little bit more certainty into how we're procuring for these customers. But it's a really fair question and something that I think everyone in the utilities sector is grappling with today.
And I really like the way you teased this out to bring it home, Alejandro. A quick point, which is a conversation for a whole nother panel, is as data centers advance, and the technology is advancing very quickly, how the more modern data centers are cleaner, and some of the environmental benefits that you see beginning to accrue with advancements as we go down the line. But the more important question, which is a very deep philosophical thread that I think you've teased out, our view is that AI, or this set of technologies, is augmentative to the human condition. The alternative view is that it's reductive. And my deepest concern is that with technology that is transformative at this level, that we don't move quickly enough to upskill and retrain and create an entire new set of opportunities for our marginalized communities, for folks that might be able to. One of the programs we're most proud of is a partnership with Foothill De Anza Community College. We came up with the first ever AI curriculum framework where they've rolled out new courses actually this fall. The machine learning courses are already oversubscribed. But programs like this, where individuals through certificate opportunities or other training may be able to capture more opportunities and future income than they could have ever imagined. And I think taking a posture that's future forward, our entire new agenda at SVLG is called Future Forward, taking that future forward posture, building a future ready workforce, leaning into the opportunity, that's where I think we see maximizing the potential of AI, right? So we lean much more into, and there's research you can find on all sides, but we lean into the research that sees these technologies as augmentative, as creating jobs, as creating a set of conditions, if leaned into intentionally and quickly enough, create a set of opportunities where they may not have existed in the past.
The cost of data centers and AI is pretty well documented. Voracious energy consumers, voracious consumers of drinking water, not just water, but treated drinking water, which is even more limited than energy, because you can't just go build more, generation in the same way. We've seen pressure. See, one big difference between San Jose Clean Energy, they have every incentive to keep the cost as low as possible for their customers, being part of a governmental structure. PG&E, because as was brought up earlier, they earn income and a return on capital investments. They have every incentive to spend as much as possible in new transmission lines, new distribution lines. So that is, that's just a fact, okay? So, there are a lot of concerns. There are people in the United States who are afraid of people that are smarter than them. You may be aware of this. I am actually worried about this AI, thinking that it's so smart. There was an article in the New York Times Sunday about students at a university in South Korea that got caught cheating with AI to take a final on a course on AI. No, just think about this for a minute, okay? That concerns me, that students are going to use AI to cheat on AI, which is AI cheating on AI.
It's rather fitting,
whatever.
isn't it?
So I think I am concerned that the benefits of AI and data centers are more speculative, and I worry that the potential gain is still in the belief stage, there is not proof of concept, and I do believe it is prudent to move slowly. And if the data centers want to go somewhere else, I'm like, let them go.
Right. So I guess that's the fundamental tension, right? Is that if you move too slowly, you have the potential to miss out on something. If you move too quickly, there are all these consequences that we've been discussing tonight. I'm sure we could keep going. I'm sure we could keep discussing this theme amongst us, but I'd love to open it up to the audience a bit. I'm sure you'll have a few questions, and we've got some time for a few questions. I think raise your hand if you have a question, and then I think Evelyn will help get this mic over to you, and
Easy enough.
I want to go back to the very beginning to get a grasp of this. Professor said that there was going to be so many new electrons needed. What I wanted to know is what percentage increase is that over the current provision, the current supply of electricity? Is it 10%, 50%, 2%? What? Instead of telling me how many gigawatts or megawatts, what percentage is that over what we currently have?
I think it's not like a fixed number. Usually we do the projection is up and low bands, right? But its averages we see in the number is about a 5% load growth. But keep in mind, United States, we have been seeing zero load growth or even very number like 0.5% load growth for a very long time.
I have a question for Ahmad. Like, with regards to lobbyists, including your group, pushing back against the transparency laws, like, why is that like, it seems like you could have transparency and growth, and I feel like California could lead in that way. So it seems like we could set a precedent for being an open state about this. So why oppose it? I mean, every day there's like more opposition to stuff that makes these companies more look like supervillains.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
No, I fully agree with you. So it's just the devil's in the detail, right? So in terms of the concept, there's no daylight between where we are and what you just shared. The devil's in the details in terms of what we actually see coming this session. I think when we talk about, again, the deeper philosophical point, I do really think there is some daylight there, which is this idea of AI being augmentative to the human condition versus reductive. And I would say that a lot of the issues we see there in Sacramento, if we're focused on the Capitol, are around jobs, right? And that's where we've been very focused. We have an AI institute, the Institute for California AI Policy. The first project that we had funded was around jobs and upskilling. And this was with community colleges, and as I mentioned, Foothill DeAnne's a community college district. So I would love to see more opportunities focused on workforce, on future-ready workforce, on upskilling, et cetera. And I think that that's where probably we have the most near-term opportunity to your point about where we change this narrative to hopefully have a narrative that's a little more copacetic.
I think those two issues are actually separate, though. We're talking about the environmental impact, I think, and you're talking about job training. And I think there's a lot of people in the area who actually believe it will benefit, including myself, AI, and who we can figure out these jobs. Job thing. But how do we do it in a way that doesn't cook our environment?
No, it's a good point. So the reason why I would say that they're really intertwined is that, just to clarify the exact point, I would argue some of the concern that you see around data center build out, I'm not saying this applies to everyone, I just want to answer the question. Some of that concern is driven by an opposition to AI. An opposition to seeing these technologies rapidly scale and evolve. And to me, many of the conversations that I've had, my opinion is that a lot of that concern is connected to jobs and workforce. I think maybe 3-4 years ago, this idea of AI, super bots coming to harm us, and those sort of sci-fi ideas may have existed, but I think now it is much more solely focused on jobs and jobs near term. And then if you're an elected in a certain district, what does the advancement of these technologies mean for jobs in my district? That was my point.
I'm not be able to add on top of that regarding, I think you asked a question about environmental impact, right? If we decompose it, really about how clean of electricity the data center use. I think Lori already gave up very good numbers regarding how clean the city of San Jose is, 65%. And a lot of the data centers connect to the grid. So electricity is basically the same as our house. It's relatively clean, will be more clean in the future, right? And the second is really careful is about the water usage. And the third one is the air pollution by the backup diesel generators, right? That's another two things we haven't talked about, right? But I can share a little bit perspective on the water usage that we haven't talked about today. No. Yeah, because water usage would really, the AI data center has two different categories, right? On big picture, one is training, extremely large scale. So it will consume a lot of water. And we don't see in California right now. Right? A lot of data center in California is inferencing data centers. And the inference data centers, before joining Stanford, I worked about 10 years in Lawrence Livermore Lab. We used to have the fastest machine in the world. Right? It's closed loop water systems, and it's about 10 megawatt. So technology is there, and that's almost 15 years ago. Technology is there. So the closed loop for like 10 megawatt, 20 megawatt, and even 100 megawatt data center is feasible. And the third one is really the backup diesel. Right? I think state of California, the California Air Resources Board, we do really good job to really regulate how diesel can be used for the backup generator. I think many states are doing that. And also we see a trend that more and more data centers utilize the natural gas as a backup generator. So if you go to the CEC website, you will see the small generation exemptions. You will see a lot of 99 megawatt natural gas generation applications. They are mainly used for the backup for the data centers.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Megan. I'm with the Office of Senator Cortese. Just wanted to say thank you, first of all, for highlighting our partnership, and obviously it's going to be a continued one. I did just want to ask, really all of you, but particularly the skeptics, like Max, was it right, or Mark? Yeah. Okay. How do you recommend, as we're entering this second year of session and going through the bill vetting process at the moment, that we, as policymakers, implement legislation, regulatory, transparency-oriented or otherwise, that doesn't hinder the competitive aspect of artificial intelligence in this new age, but that is also implemented equitably for both the workforce and, of course, the environment? I guess, obviously, this is a very broad question, but, what are some key pieces of legislation that you'd like to see?
Thank you, Megan, for asking that question. I will tell you that this issue of data centers and the connection between affordability and clean energy is of national concern. And California is actually behind on this. There's this mythology about California being the leader all the time. There are other states. So I'm going to give two as an example. And forgive me, I don't remember the bill numbers in other states. But Oregon just passed what we think is a model piece of legislation when it comes to data center regulation. The other one, I believe, is Minnesota. The Bring Your Own Clean Energy, which they call Beyonce. I go to national conferences of advocates from around the country. So this is how I know what's happening in other places. Ohio has also some good legislation. So this is an area that I think there are other good examples that I encourage you to take a look at and see what you think.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question.
Thank you for being here and sharing this important information with us. Zeke and Lee, Executive Director for Silicon Valley Youth Climate Action. We actually have some of our students here. They're super interested in what you are doing. Lord, this question is for you, but others feel to jump in as well too. San Jose, is looking at quite a few data center projects. Sounds like Climate Smart is also part of your department. As you are looking at all these data centers, what kind of strategy are you guys looking at to mitigate all the environmental impacts? And are there also other strategies other cities or states or countries are utilizing to think through? You guys are looking at building data centers, but what are possible ideas, right, to also keep these data center builders responsible for the environment around them and the neighborhoods around them?
Yeah, it's a great question, and thank you so much for being here tonight. We really appreciate that. So I would say, there's different categories of data center developers that we're working with. Some of them, just like the bill that Mark mentioned, are bringing their own generation. So many of these corporate data centers have their own sustainability goals. They've entered into power purchase agreements, and the good thing about San Jose Clean Energy is, that's fine to me. If you want to bring me a solar project or a wind project, I'll take it. I don't need to buy it again. That can just lower costs for these data centers. And then others are really looking to us to procure that energy. And we would do that the same as we do for all of the customers that we serve today. We're very committed to our own climate goals here in the city. And, as I said, we've reached the state's goal 5 years earlier. We're really proud of that. We're continuing to invest in renewable projects. But we're also tempering that with making sure that we understand when this load is coming online so that we don't over-procure for these customers. But I would say that's our main strategy, and really proud to be working with these customers who I would say by and large here in San Jose, and certainly that's not always the case across the country, but I would say most of the ones that we're working with here really do have their own very aggressive sustainability goals where they're not only looking to be in that 60% renewable that all of our customers are in, but some of them, which is great, want to be in our 100% renewable product. So that's another product that we offer customers. If you're a residential customer, it'll cost you about $5 a month. So I encourage you to sign up for that, less than a cup of coffee here in San Jose. But many of our corporate customers have enrolled in that 100% green energy. And so that's something we're really encouraging as well.
Well, that's it. And thank you, everybody, for being here tonight.
Well, maybe not it. Let me just say, because we do have students here, if one student would like to get the last question here.
Thank you so much for hosting this event. I think you guys are a great panel of speakers, like truly incredible. I wanted to ask what you think the student take on AI usage should be. As a high school student, every day I hear ChatGPT, AI, homework, study, cheat, test, all the time. And I just wonder what you think students should do, because as we are in Silicon Valley, the Bay Area, people that go to my high school will be tech leaders of the future. I mean, Steve Jobs went to my high school, so it's pretty crazy. So what do you think students should do about AI? What should their perspective be and action?
I have two kids, and my older one is senior high school. So I encourage her to use AI. And also, I think more and more high school, as Anna mentioned, is build the AI into the high school curriculum, right? But keep in mind, AI should not replace human being. AI should serve humanity, right? Make the humanity better. And and another, I can get very long conversation, but I would encourage you to really use AI to augment your learning process, but do not let AI to replace you. And the easy way you can do is, if you find one answer of GPT, you don't happy with that, and put the outcome from GPT, go to Gemini, and challenge Gemini, and outcome from Gemini, go to Anthropic's cloud, and challenge each other to find the answer you like the most, and you learn from it. Just like you have 3 different mentors, and they teach you something.
Probably two things I would add to that same thing, thinking about my kids and some of their experiences. One, around the topic of fluency with the AI or the technologies. Stanford, San Jose State, but I know Stanford in particular, they have a whole set of AI-connected coursework that's free and online. And I mention that because some of the most prominent AI topical professors on the planet offer courses that you can take for free, right? So options to augment your learning, but to really develop a facility with the technology, I think is very important. Then at a more macro level, I think about your work plan and your curriculum and how you might modernize your approach to develop a set of skills that can make you more effective and more competitive. I think of logic. I think of ethics. I think of reading great books connected to strategy, right? Things, again, to the professor's point, that are more focused on the human element. But I think that really allows you to better yourself in a manner that coexists very nicely alongside the technologies, but also positions you further down the line to very positively impact said technologies.
Very good question. I really appreciate you asking. I would say that the challenge of AI is to figure out how it can be used to reduce inequality in society, how it can be used to reduce the wealth gap. I'm very concerned that the way that AI is being developed, the parties that are funding it, their main concern is to turn a buck. And that is not one which ends up generally in improving lives. I'm one of those people that believes that technology is actually value neutral. Technology can be used for good things. It can be used for bad things. Too often, the results of technology is that its use is that the haves get more and the have-nots get less. The only way that technology yields more equitable outcomes is for people using it to set that as their goal, as their mission. And so that is my challenge to students, to figure out how to use and utilize the AI to create more equality and fairness in society.
Yeah.
Beautifully said.
So well said, Mark. I'll just leave it at this because I'm an optimist, but I agree with all of my panelists here. Really important to, also prioritize that human connection and use it for good. And one thing that we're doing at San Jose Clean Energy that I'm pretty excited about, we've tested or looking at some new software that can actually identify if you're on the wrong rate or not and how to save you money, and the AI can detect that. So I agree. I think there's going to be a lot of new and innovative ways that really can bring help to our community and to our ratepayers to really look at better products for everyone. So I think the more that you focus on that, the better off we will all be.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you to our panelists and thank you to our audience. My name is John Deanna. I am the managing editor at CalMatters and one of Alejandro's many bosses. And I love events like this where we bring some of the smartest minds in California together to talk about the critical issues of the day. And this is part of CalMatters' core mission, is to help people understand what's going into the key policy decisions that affect their lives. And so the fact that you are a part of that tonight shows how much you care about the world around you, and we really thank you for that. as was probably mentioned at the opening, which I missed because the greatest problem in California is not AI, it's traffic. But as was probably mentioned at the opening, CalMatters is a nonprofit organization, completely donor funded. And we depend on people like you. And so if you can find a way to help support us, because the journalism we do is unbiased and it's independent and it's in depth. And I'll say it this way. Good journalism is not cheap, and cheap journalism is not good. So if you can find it in your heart to support us, we'd appreciate it. For those of you who are on the graying end of things like me, and you want to get back at your ungrateful kids, you can mention us in your will. So with that, again, I'll thank all of our panelists for their time, and thank you for the time that you've spent with us tonight. So thank you again.
Thank you so much.
Oh, wait. Sorry. I forgot to thank our sponsors, which is what the whole reason why I was here. Tonight's event was sponsored by the James Irvine Foundation, San Jose Clean Energy, LIFT, California Association of Nonprofits, the League of California Cities, the California State Association of Counties, Marin Clean Energy, and Sierra Health Foundation. Thank you so much to our sponsors.